Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is a licensing subcommittee meeting. I am the Governance Services Officer. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm just going to very quickly go through the protocol for remote meetings. It is as follows. Only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the chair. Will everyone please ensure that their mics are muted when they are not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic. When speaking, be succinct and do not exceed the allotted time frames highlighted at the start of the hearing. If you're referring to a specific page or a picture in a report, please refer to that specific page or picture, please. If you have any technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function to put any formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruption to behaviour will result in removal from this meeting. If there's more than one application, but in the case of this meeting, there is not. Applicants and all other parties will be asked to leave the meeting once proceedings have concluded. Once all applications have been considered, any removed parties will be in, and each party will be notified of the decision, but in this case, there's only one decision. So that is the remote meeting protocol. So we'll go to the first item on the formal meeting agenda, which is the election of a committee chair. Councillors, please.
I'd like to suggest Councillor Snell, please.
Thank you very much, Anya, and I have to take on the role. So let us proceed as laid out on the agenda. I welcome all of you, and we'll sort out who's who further down the agenda. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my reminder, my prompt here of this type of review hearing. I don't think we've had any request to depart from normal procedures. And I perhaps ought to introduce who is on this committee. So basically, the committee comprises for this hearing, the background for those who don't understand it. We had an expedited hearing just before Christmas brought by the police, requested a review because they were concerned of a lack of management at the Haggerston. That determined to suspend the licence, and this is now the full hearing, which has to happen within 28 days, where we make a rather more considered decision about the long-term future for the premises and whether they can safely be allowed to operate to comply with licensing objectives. That's where we are today. I'll chair this meeting because I was on the first of those hearings. Anya was not at the first of those hearings. I represent Dalston. Anya, which ward do you represent?
Hoxton East and Shoreditch.
So neither of us are represent Haggerston, which would bar us from being at this meeting. Perhaps if I can just go around quickly and introduce the other people. Gareth, do you want to say who you are and what you're doing?
I don't mind saying it again. I'm the Governance Services Officer. I will be recording the minutes for this meeting, and obviously all the people on this meeting I've contacted previously to send an invitation to for this meeting. Okay.
Lovely. And then they're going to speak quickly, briefly, soon. But Suba is basically the licensing officer who will introduce the report. I'm looking around. Amanda is our legal advisor who we will turn to for advice, but we welcome her to intervene at any point if she doesn't feel we're sticking to the legal rules and she thinks we're missing anything. The other person I can see here today is Channing, who is representing the licensing authority, who have also made representations as one of the responsible authorities in this review. And then lastly, from police, do you want to introduce yourself, the police licensing department?
Yes, Chair. Hello, I'm PC Neil Hunwick. I'm part of the police licensing units at Stoke Newington Police Station.
Okay, so if I missed anybody from the council, I think I've covered everybody, haven't I? Good. Rightio. So let's have an introduction. I see Andy Newman there is the person who's brought in as the consultant by the licensee. I see Peter Clark, who was at the first hearing, who is the DPS for the premises, Who else will you be having speaking today on your behalf? You're on mute at the moment.
So we have Otis Marchbank and LJ, the two managers, to answer questions, but I'll be doing the speaking.
Thank you for that clarity. Then in terms of other persons, I saw Angela out there somewhere. Do you want to introduce yourself, Angela?
Yes, sure. So I live almost next door to the Haggerston, 2 buildings away. So I'm here to bring the view of a resident of the area.
Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. And we had a whole load of representations in support of the premises. Now, the procedure note says everybody gets 5 minutes, but having read those written representations, they're basically talking about it being a popular venue and this must be an exceptional outcome. I don't know that I need to hear that from a lot of different people. So can perhaps one of the people who wants to speak in support of the venue from what we call the other persons, can someone summarise to me exactly who's going to make that case and how long you're going to take on it, please? Is anybody leading that perspective?
So if there are no volunteers, I've read all 101 representations. I can summarise them if it would help, and then obviously people are here for questions and answers unless somebody would like to step forward.
The names we were provided in advance were Lydia, Catherine, Kyra, Naomi, and Kwame. So if any of those wish to provide evidence, but I'd have thought we probably don't need all 5. It's up to you. By all means, when we come to that item, if you've agreed in advance who's going to present, that would be simpler than just ending. And Andy can present in your place if you just want to leave it in. But we've seen your representations, we've logged them, and as I say, there's no point in saying the same thing 5 times over. Is that okay, everybody? Are we all clear?
Yes, I'm here
Right,
as well,
so,
Karen.
sorry, who was that?
Sorry, also I need to change my background. I'm from my work computer. I just wanted to say that you read my name out as well. I'm happy for Andy to kind of be the person of contact, but just if there is any questions for the support of the Haggerston, also happy to use my voice.
Okay. Sorry, Angela, I'm getting you on both sides then. The residents, don't worry, we'll come to that on the agenda. If people want
Chair,
to speak,
Chair, I think that was an error in the chair's brief. Just for clarification, if I'm correct, Angela is speaking against the application. Is that correct, Angela?
That is correct.
Correct. And then Lydia, Catherine, Kwame, etc., are speaking against. That was an error in the chair's brief. Apologies, everybody, and apologies, Chair, and apologies, Councillor Sizer.
Actually, I think the brief is right. I think, I'm sorry if I've confused people. Let's get there and sort it out when we get there. So, fire away. First, apologies for absence. We have no apologies for absence.
That's correct, Chair.
Declarations of interest. I've already said myself and Anya do not represent Haggerston. I have no declarations of interest. Anya?
No, none at all.
Great, thank you. We do not, minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any minutes, Gareth?
There are no minutes with this pack, Councillor Chair.
Thanks very much. So we have various procedures depending on what type of license application we're dealing with. There is, with the papers, explanation of the procedure for a type C hearing, and this is one where we're considering an application not brought by a premises owner, but brought by the police or one of the responsible authorities to review a premises license. So it's a slightly back to front order to one where we're considering a new license. So it's there in the papers. I'll go through it quickly. We've done the formal introductions. The licensing officer, Suba, is going to give us some quick background on this case. The applicant is the police. So I'll be honest with you, I do need to understand exactly what you're after, because we've had the papers in dribs and drabs. So we're looking to the police to come to us and explain exactly what they're seeking from this full review. We will also then turn to Channing from the council's own licensing department. That is supposed to be 5 minutes. Because we will, for all of these things, we will have a discussion phase, and if we haven't got enough information, we will ask you in the discussion phase. So please keep it brief. We've then got the other person's case, which will be the people who are speaking up for the premises and also speaking against the premises and the harm it does to its neighbours. And then finally, we get to the premises license holders making their presentation to address all the concerns that other people have raised. And we know that Andy Newman, as the licensing consultant, is going to take the lead on that one. We'll then have a discussion. Anything we haven't covered properly, we will cover in discussion. What myself and Anya will be doing is trying to get absolute clarity on what everybody is after from this meeting. So we will be asking questions for clarification all the way through this process. So by the time we come to the discussion, we've got a clear understanding of what's being proposed and whether it supports the council's licensing objectives. Okay, so that's the introduction. What do I need next? I think we're away, aren't we? So go on, Suba. Unless Amanda tells me I've missed anything, I think we're ready now, Suba, for you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application from the Metropolitan Police for a summary license review under Section 53A of the Licensing Act 2003 in respect of the premises at the Haggerston 438 Queensland Road. The application followed an incident of serious crime and disorder which occurred on the 18th of December 2021, as stated within the report. At the interim steps pending full review hearing on the 22nd of December 2021, the decision was made to suspend the license with immediate effect pending the full review, given the likelihood of serious of crime and failure to comply with the premises license conditions. After the consultation of period, we received representations from the licensing, one other person in support of the reviews, and few representations against the review. The applicant, which is the police, the premises license holder, and one other person in support of review, have provided some additional information which has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Suba. Very clear. Okay, Anya, can we move on? Thank you. So over to the police. Can you please present your application and explain exactly what you're after at this stage of the review?
Thank you, Chair. As you're aware, you were in the initial interim steps hearing. So for councillors' benefit, I'll just quickly recap. At 2:50 AM on Saturday, the 18th of December 2021, a female was knocked unconscious with a bottle at the Haggerston Public House. When police were called by the ambulance service to the location, there were about 200 people outside, and the staff inside were found to be obstructive. The manager refused to allow access to the CCTV, preventing identification of the suspects, who could well have been still outside. And the venue had already been cleaned, all of which had frustrated the initial police investigation. During the interim steps hearing, the venue managers actually pointed out that they had identified the suspect and had ushered them out of the venue earlier on, again frustrating the police inquiry. We have engaged with Andy Newman and the venue, and I don't think the chain of events that, as I've just described, is in doubt. We're not disputing that. As a result of that, we are looking to rehabilitate the Haggerston rather than looking for revocation, and we've had no recent serious incidents, so this is the first occurrence that has brought any sort of review. As a result of that, we have a series of conditions that have been forwarded to everybody, which has been agreed in advance. And I hope that you've been forwarded the last draft, the final draft. We're also seeking that the venue be brought back to core hours, which is largely being accepted by the venue. And we additionally seek the removal of the DPS to be replaced with a new DPS who can give the venue the time and effort that it requires in order to keep it on the straight and narrow. And that is where the police currently sit.
Thank you. Yes, I saw the conditions. I wasn't clear about the core hours, and I wasn't clear about the new DPS. So, in fact, that was out of the statement provided by Andy Newman. So, thanks for that clarity. Anya, do you want to ask any questions?
That's really helpful. Thank you. And thank you for all the paperwork in advance. I had a couple of questions to pick up on. It's good to hear about the hours having been spoken about. I would like a little bit more information about any dispersal policy. I can see some pointers that have been put in there, better signage, high-vis vests, etc. But there are concerns around the dispersal outside the venue, and I'd like to hear how that's been discussed. That's my first concern. My second one is, because this is specifically a violence against women and girls issue, I'd be really keen to hear what steps have been taken and will be taken going forward to ensure that this doesn't happen, or at least there's minimal chance of anything like this ever happening. You know, as a council, this is one of our core priorities at the moment, and so I'd be really keen to hear what you will be doing to implement that.
Yeah, Councillor, I think that the questions obviously for the venue to answer with regards to the safeguarding issues. We understand there was we did have some discussions around a safeguarding officer in the venue. I think that'll be for the other side to allay your fears on that. Our main concern was with the dispersal as well, because we have had a lot of problems at 3 AM with the Haggerston dispersing. We've asked them on numerous occasions, and that was part and parcel of the initial submission, which should hopefully be dealt with in part by bringing it back to core hours. We don't tend to have too much of a problem with venues that have got the earlier close. The Haggerston will still need to be on their guard with dispersal. Dispersal is about the effort that you put into it. All the policies in the world, you can write them down, they look good on paper, but ultimately it's down to the effort that's put that in on a night-by-night basis. And that will stand or fall as we experience it going forward. We'll find out whether or not they're doing as they're saying. And that's, yeah.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. Also, I saw that there was an objective around SIAs on the door, that it was 1 per 75. Is that the recommendation?
Yeah, that's the current industry recommended ratio of security to people inside using the venue.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, can I then carry on that same theme? I know we're going to come back to the premises at the end of this discussion, but let's get clarity on the police position. So on dispersal, what interests me is we've had a number of these reviews recently. And on the one hand, we're saying we've got to successfully, get people away from the premises and not cause nuisance to the neighbours. But in the particular case where we have an incident takes place like this, in a number of cases recently, you've been complaining that actually people were got out the way, and therefore that made it more difficult to find the perpetrator. Can you just explain to me what is the police attitude on the right balance between getting people away from the scene, but also making sure that it's not at the expense of being able to follow up the perpetrator?
I think there's not exactly a one size fits all. I mean, certainly with regards to an incident of this nature, if somebody's been attacked in the corridor, that really the immediate scene where there might be some forensic merit with regards to broken glass, fingerprints, blood, that sort of thing, that's the area really that needs to be cleared. And if you've then also identified a suspect, if we're talking about somebody that's violent, 6.5 foot tall by 5 foot wide, wants to fight the world, we would never expect, nor is there any expectation, that anybody at the venue would try to engage and to keep them there. But by the same token, if we're talking about a calm female that's actually been ushered out in this particular circumstances, I feel that there would have been no problem if an attempt had been made to keep them at the premises for when the police arrive. So there is no one answer. You know, they've got to use a degree of common sense. But the let's wash everything away and ignore the police, that is one extreme. Yeah.
Okay. I've noted that, and I would expect Andy Newman to explain to us how his dispersal policy gets that balance right, because I wasn't totally clear skimming through it earlier. The other thing, so again, on the submission from Andy Newman, that was basically where I picked up that we were talking about reversion to core hours. What is being suggested is that that is for a trial period of 6 months, with a view to then extending the hours at some later stage. And they also suggest that the long-established jazz night on a Sunday night is made an exception for. And I just wondered what your views were on that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, we're seeking a change to the hours. Any change to the hours back to what they were or advancement would have to be done by variation at a later stage. So this is our submission here and now.
Sorry, Andy, you're probably going to tell me off for straying off the seeking clarification, but fire away if you've got something to say. Sorry, I can't hear you at the moment.
Apologies. I'm not sure the best way to go because a lot of questions are coming up. I think I could clarify a lot of them. So I didn't know if you wanted to go through everybody, see what they had to say, and then go to a discussion phase.
Sorry, I thought you might think I was stepping them up. I want to get complete clarity at this stage. I'm lining this up for you to come back and respond. That's properly for the discussion. So I probably have stepped slightly over the mark in seeking clarity, but it's been useful to me. I hope to Councillor Sizer, you're going to get your chance later. We'll make sure no stone is left unturned. Okay. Anything more, Councillor Sizer?
Not at this stage from the police. That's been very helpful, though. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if that's okay, I will move on to the licensing authority, who also have taken a view on this review. Where are you coming from, Channing? Are you reassured by the proposals made by the premises and by Andy? And if so, what more should we do?
Chair, thank you, Chair. You can see from my representation, it was made following the incident, and since then we've had some discussion with Andy Newman and the agent, and he's put forward some quite significant proposals and policies to implement at the premises. So I would say we're mostly satisfied with what has been proposed, and also the issue around the plans of the premises. Mr. Newman has assured me they'd be happy to submit a minor variation to amend the floor plans to what they are at the moment. And what really is a concern for us is that this is in our SPA, and the expectation of the operators in our SPA, they need to meet a certain standard so as not to add to the issues. And with the procedures that have been suggested and the training that's going to be followed, I'm quite, it's alleviated my concerns quite a bit that they can prevent these kind of incidents from happening again. Just touching on the issue of violence against women and girls, I know that they've also included WAVE training, which is welfare and vulnerability engagement training, and that does include an element of violence of women and girls training. So that should alleviate our concerns around that. With regards to the core hours, I understand they've agreed core hours, and essentially if the hours are going to remain as they are on a Sunday, that would be for the discretion of the committee, because going by our policy, Chair, then we would, with the police, expect core hours. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Well, can I just clarify to the people at this meeting where the business of plans came up from? At the first hearing, it was argued that the reason for not giving access to the CCTV was because of layout issues, and it became clear that the layout presented to us was actually different from the layout as the current premises. So it was a condition that they provided accurate plans of the layout, and my understanding, Tanning is saying that he's looking for a condition to be for that to be sorted out, and otherwise than that, he's supporting the police position. Have I understood that correctly, Tanning?
Yes, Chair, I'm supporting the police position. Essentially, though, what the applicants, well, not the applicants, sorry, what Mr. Newman has submitted goes a substantial way to alleviate the concerns that are in my original representation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sizer, any questions of clarification?
No, not from that. That was really helpful. Thank you. And good to hear about the violence against women and girl implementation. So thank you. But I know I'll hear more from Andy Newman.
Okay, so I think if that's okay, first of all, we'll hear from the representative of Neighbours to talk about what was mentioned. I mean, it's interesting. The police are saying there's no record of harm from these premises, but then saying, but actually there is a recognition of a dispersal issue that I've certainly heard about just as a resident from, you know, a couple of miles away. So do you want to expand on that, Angela, or just tell us what your perspective is?
Sure. So my perspective is from someone who lives very close to the Haggerston. Actually, I'm between two bars, so the Haggerston and Pamela. And what I have experienced is that, so I moved in May, so a bit more than 6 months, and for almost every weekend when the Haggerston was open and had something going on, like a concert, it would attract a lot of people loitering outside of the premise and outside of my residence, right? Even leaning against the walls of my building. And it would attract a group of drug dealers, so almost the same people. So I reported to the police several times. I even gave the license plates because they always come with the same two cars. So they are kind of, they know the people who regularly go to the Haggerston, at least on Saturdays and Friday and Saturdays. Maybe probably on Sundays, it's a different population going to the bar for the jazz nights. But basically for 6 months, every Friday and Saturday, there will be a huge group of people loitering outside the bar, drug dealing, then noise, fights going on sometimes. And I'm not talking about like a group of 2, 5 people outside sometimes. So I have shared videos. Sometimes it's hundreds of people occupying the whole street, the pavement, sometimes even in the middle of the road, causing some cars to need to stop. And yeah, of course, fights are not uncommon. And also this group of drug dealers, they come with their own portable speaker. So they don't go inside the bar. They just talk to the people who go to the bar. They seem to be friends actually with the regular patrons of the bar. And they stay outside with this speaker with super loud music until 5 a.m. So yes, that's my experience as a resident, is that weekends, by anticipation already, like I dread that I won't be able to rest, which was the case. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much my experience. And
so
yes.
So you support the recommendation from the police that we take the hours back to core hours, which would, I think, if I remember rightly, be 11 o'clock and midday Friday, Saturday, whatever that is. I must look it up. You support that suggestion, yes?
Yes, I think that would really make my life much easier, definitely.
And the licensee is suggesting that actually the Sunday night is different because they have the jazz day. Is it your experience that the Sunday night is different, or is that as bad as the other nights?
Sunday is different, definitely, yes. So it doesn't attract the same group of people, and I think this group of drug dealers, they don't come on Sunday. So yes.
Thank you. Anything else to say?
Sorry, sorry. Yes, my partner is here next to me because he has also experienced all this and called the police several times. No, that's it. Just that I called the police several times, so this must be logged in the system, and with the dates and hours. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Councillor Sizer.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking, and we're really sorry to hear of the distress that you've had. I just wondered if you'd seen signs of people from the venue helping with the dispersal. Have you witnessed anything that would have helped move things on?
No, I haven't. No. Yes, and I myself tried once to actually my partner, he went downstairs and asked, could you maybe, like, if you want to stay here, fine, but could you maybe at least turn the music down? But they, like, at 4 a.m. after under the effect of alcohol and drug consumed the whole night, this doesn't work. And then even I'm scared of being harassed if I ask. So no, so my only option was to call the police. But of course, the police is overwhelmed on weekends and can rarely attend the scene. They came a couple of times, mostly when there were fights. But yeah.
You feel that there would be a measure of reassurance with the hours change, though?
I think so, because yes.
Thank you. And again, just to reiterate, thank you for taking the time out of your day and for coming and providing your input. It really is appreciated.
Thank you for giving me the space.
Can I, sorry, this is not relevant to the hearing, but I'm going to say it anyway. Basically, can I suggest to the police that they do contact Angela, because this whole business of car-based drug dealing affects vast areas of the borough, including outside my house. And there is a way of reporting car numbers so they get picked up by the cameras and the occupants get stopped and searched. And that is a very effective way of making sure the same people don't keep coming back. So it doesn't sound as if the information you're provided is getting through, Angela. So I'd like the police to just get in touch with you and tell you how to pass on those numbers. And I would expect the premises, quite honestly, to be doing exactly the same. But there is an online way of passing on the numbers, and it's a very effective way of dealing with that type of drug dealing, as we found in where I live. Sorry, just a point on the side. Sorry, Angela. I hope, Amanda, I hope that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yes,
okay,
I'm available.
So let's move on to the other persons. There's a number of people speaking.
Chair, sorry to interject, the PC Henwick has raised his hand.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Come on, PC Henwick.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, and Angela, this is probably aimed at you. When you do ring us and a CAD incident is created, even if officers don't necessarily attend, that criminal intelligence is passed into our criminal system and then passed to safe neighbourhoods and the teams that are trying to gather intelligence on this car-based drug deal. A lot of it is the nitrous oxide that they're selling, and that's part and parcel of why we just thought hours would be a good thing, because they feed off the crowds. If the venue's not dispersing, which is what's been happening here, then the crowds are there and they feed off them because they're mobile in the cars, etc. So we're absolutely singing from the same song sheet with regards to what the calls and hopefully what the resolution will be here. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, so in terms of speaking in favour of the premises, we have another, and saying this is exceptional circumstances, a large number of people have contacted us. Does anyone want to speak up, or shall we let Andy speak on your behalf and then if anyone wants to chip in, they can do. Is that a good way to go forward? I see Andy's nodding his head, so go on, Andy, take it away.
So just to clarify, you'd like me to speak on the residents' behalf first, and in my presentation, I don't want to stray into the question and answers because I've only got five minutes.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So I'll do an overall of the 101 residents, businesses, and other people that have made representations in favour of the Haggerston, and it's not just keep the licence. There's mention that whether it's the rich and famous or the poor or people who feel excluded, that the Haggerston is an all-inclusive venue for LGBT plus, minorities, anybody who feels vulnerable. And despite the evening in question, the overwhelming feedback was that people feel safe whilst they're in the venue. They also say, many of them, that the jazz night is an exceptional night, whereby there's two bebop, which is 40s and 50s, I believe, jazz, attracts a maturer crowd and is internationally renowned, where they perceive there's no trouble from the venue on those nights. It's reinforced by the fact that the people who are supporting are people like the ex-manager of the Rio Cinema, the owner of the bookshop up the road, the chap who's the last entry, who says he's a resident next door and he doesn't find anything that bothers him. A resident who says they live opposite, they don't find noise that bothers them. They find it a holistic place, a cultural hub for all kinds of people. The hospitality and the feeling they have is positive. Whilst I question the people like Sam, the proprietor for the bookshop, explains how he's been searched on going into the premises. So overall, you've got a cultural hub, charitable, art, fantastic music night that's renowned with a largely different crowd, but people of all types, especially those that feel excluded, race, colour, age, LGBTQ+, I got that right, and so on and so forth. They find that a community pub, an individual pub that puts that's a great boon for Hackney. So I think it's worth reflecting that we've got 101 people stating this. And these people are very strong with their views that they think the Haggerston is worth saving. I think that reflects what's happening at plus some other clubs as well. We have the Jago here, for example. So I think that's sufficient to give an overall idea of the value of the Haggerston. Thank you.
So do any of the other persons who are here today who wish to support the Haggerston, does anybody wish to come in with, that was very brief, thank you, Andy. Does anybody want to chip in any of those 5 names I read out earlier? Catherine, I see you raise your hand, do come in.
Hiya, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Obviously, the comments that were made from the neighbour, I've forgotten her name, that lives next door, but I live across the road and have done for 15 years or more. And obviously some of the comments that were made, I would say, are slightly representative to that strip, because obviously there's multiple businesses and things it's used for. So could you consider like planning in terms of the road, access to the road, allowing people to park at certain times of the night? And look, and obviously you've got like a kebab shop that runs quite late, you've got 2 24-hour shops that run late, there's lots of things, and obviously it's always been an issue for drugs, I think, and I've seen it being cleaned up at different times, but it's not just on the weekends. So I just think it's a wider problem, and not one venue is going to solve that, personally.
Well, thank you. At this point, it's for people to make points. And certainly, as I understand it, the proposal we're going to get from the licensee is going to be talking about a dispersal policy. And certainly in discussion, we will speak to our licensing officers and say, are they confident that the premises will work with us to use all the things we can to make that area safe? But as I say, at this point, that's a suggestion. That's in a way more for discussion. We'll come to that later.
Personally, I wouldn't want to see them used as a scapegoat, essentially, and the problem not being rectified. It would be such a shame just to lose that place as a scapegoat, essentially, for those issues.
It is sadly the case. So I'll put this into discussion. I don't want to say it at this stage. We'll get to the subject. Anya, anything on this subject before we let Andy get on with the premises point of view?
Not really, other than, and again, it might be a wider thing, but you can't get a pack with 101, 102 positive emails and not see an overall flavour. So in some ways, that's not what I'm concerned with. What we're concerned with is this specific incident and making sure it doesn't happen again, and that it is both. I can hear that there's some, there's many positive aspects, but equally I can hear the concern of a resident that says they are concerned about the area outside their front door. So I want to take all the things into consideration.
Thank you. As I say, we're in danger of moving into discussion. We better get you on, Andy, and keep to the subject, and then kick this stuff around once we get to discussion. So take it away again, Andy, on behalf of the premises.
I don't want to keep the subject clear. Thank you, sir. Right. Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Acne Bars and Mr. Clark in particular to apologise. Apologise for the incident on the night. Apologise for taking the eye off the ball. There are mitigating factors. Sad death of his business partner, COVID, the manager from 6 months ago having to depart swiftly. However, Mr. Clark himself says they are not excuses. We should have had everything in place, and we agree. We'd like to thank the police for we've had a lot of positive discussions, and whilst the going to the core hours, that's the late night hours, if you like, it is somewhat tough. As Neil Hunwick pointed out, they come from a position of strength, which they do. However, as Hackney, who are well versed in licensing, know, what needs to be decided is on the basis of what has happened now. And the premises have invested strongly in getting, dare I say, strongly experienced advice, invested in policies and training, invested in getting their ducks in a row. The last things are just getting the plan in place and the CCTV improved, because there's no way this premises will open before they have everything correct. I was contracted for 6 policies, delivered 7. They've got, I'm contracted to give them advice for 12 months on licensing and do 3 compliance visits in 18 months. What else? It's regrettable. All the staff have been trained by me with the DPS and the 2 managers attending. I've also done a 1-to-2 with the 2 managers and a 1-to-1 with the DPS about responsibilities. I'll expand on that, if I may, in the discussions stage. But if I say Councillor Sizer is quite right in saying that we need to look at this incident and also as a whole. And what we say is this Sunday night is a very special night with the House Jazz Band, the Acclaim, the reputation, the different crowd, and I thank the resident for acknowledging this. I would also point out, so I'm straying into this discussion stage myself. It's so easy to do, but what we're saying is that we are in a place now whereby the infrastructure is right and will be right. People are trained and now know what to do, and there's no way they would act in the same way again. They have strong advice, strong foundations, everything is right to go forward. I would also point out that beforehand, the Sunday was a 3 o'clock finish and half an hour after. It's going to be extremely tough for the premises to survive on core hours. Total change of the way they operate. We say that if the committee was so minded, the extra time would help them with what's been a wonderful evening for many nights and help them sustain, keep jobs and keep their reputation going. Just a couple of points. They have complied, changing the security team, who, by the way, it was a security team we found out later had let the suspect go, who should be at least been considered a witness. I've written 7 policies for them. There's been extensive training on many aspects, as in the papers, and all those points that were put in the decision, I was able to see the minutes, have been covered off. So I would respectfully say that this license is worth keeping. And one last thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that I did offer my contact details to be sent to the resident so that I could speak with her and see if we could allay her concerns. And of course, in the future, we would look to offer up our details, or the Haggerston details, or indeed mine, for a regular communication to ensure that things are done right or any concerns are acted with promptly and efficiently. I'll save the rest for the discussion, if I may, sir. That concludes my address.
Can I just say something quickly, Councillor Sizer, and then I'll invite you in for clarification. I didn't find these your additional information till quite late, so I've had to scan through it fairly quickly. But clearly, there's very, very detailed work gone in place. Not immediately, but at some point in the discussion, can you take me to the page in that supplementary document that sets out what I was asking PC Hunswick about earlier, which is the complicated business of trying to get people off the premises to keep everyone safe, but doing what you can to ensure that we don't let witnesses off the premises, because that's perpetrators off the premises, because that we know that's beyond the regular job of running premises, but we have to work on the basis that these incidents might happen. And if you can point out to me a page where you're saying, keep yourselves safe, but please try and keep possible perpetrators on the premises. I couldn't find that when I had a skim through, but you may be able to show it to me. Go on.
So can I just answer that as best I can without going into the dispersal policy? I've written a comprehensive, as far as it can be, a comprehensive crime prevention, crime scene preservation policy. But I agree with Neil Hunwick, much as each premise needs to be considered on its own merits, each situation, which is largely dynamic and different, I've copious experience with this at different levels, is managed on its own merits. I mean, for a premise, they need to at all times promote the licensing objectives and not undermine them. They're not police officers, but they need to do their very best and be able to justify decisions of what they do and what they don't do to help identify and apprehend offenders, identify witnesses, preserve evidence. It's not always a one size fits all, because sometimes you've got to bring stuff in, or sometimes to leave exhibits in situ in an ideal world, but they may cause danger to people. Imagine a gun or a broken bottle, for example, and so forth. So it's a big area that's not entirely covered, but I think it's complicated. Sometimes you segment people, sometimes you keep everybody together, sometimes everybody out. It needs careful thought. This was also covered in the training, but I don't think I went into that specific in the paperwork, although there's a lot of guidance there. Does that help?
It helps. I'm going to come back with a follow-up question, but I'm going to let Anya come in first. Anya, what clarification do you want?
My apologies, because my dog was going crazy in the background. So they're communicating with each other. I just wanted to double check that you said the request for extra hours was for the Sunday evenings only. Was that right?
Yes, ma'am. We're not requesting extra hours.
To keep as is, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, there's been negotiation with the police.
Yeah. To keep to the ones that are
revert to cut to core hours from some pretty damn good hours, because of frankly the errors of judgment that have been made.
Of course. Okay. No, that was useful.
So the hours are, forgive me if I'm wrong, but late night refreshment, live music, and I think alcohol, off the top of my head, are till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
3:30, everybody out. We're asking for 1 o'clock.
Okay.
With half an hour later for everybody out. I make that sound everybody out. We're going to chuck everybody out at once. No. But that's that. And if I may, at this point, just coming back to a couple of earlier points made by Neil, the police officer. My understanding, although I wasn't at the last hearing because I wasn't employed then, was that...
Sorry, can I see Amanda is raising her hand. She may be worried that we're getting ahead of ourselves. Amanda, do you want to comment?
I was only going to ask to go over these core hours again, because is it actually core hours as in our policy, or is it some reduced hours as agreed with the police? Because the core hours end on Monday to Thursday, 8 to 23, but I know that they start from 11. So, for example, in this case, Monday to Thursday will be 11 to 2300 hours. Friday and Saturday will be 11 a.m. till midnight. And Sunday, I know, is something you want to probably discuss, because it's at the chair's, at the committee's discretion whether or not they'll agree to keep the hours that are on Sunday, which are currently 11 a.m. to 3 a.m. because of that event that takes place. So when you just now, Mr. Newman mentioned 1 o'clock with 30 minutes drinking up time, 1 a.m. that is, I wasn't quite sure whether or not that is core hours. So either, the police may have to clarify that point. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to bring Amanda in there, but we need to get clear about this. My understanding, Amanda, from the additional information we were provided, is they're not looking for the existing hours on a Sunday night, but they're saying to keep the jazz music there, they would like 1 o'clock music till 1 and alcohol till 1, and then get everybody out for 1:30. That's my understanding. And Andy, Amanda has correctly laid out the times that we would consider core hours through the week. Are those the hours that you're prepared to accept?
Yeah, on instructions of the client, they're the hours prepared to accept. The police licensing have asked for core hours, so we have a slight dispute there. I'd like to just add, I've made the point about the SIA being the people identifying the suspect and ushering her out. For some reason, they've gone and been replaced by somebody. That company have gone and been replaced by a security company that we've checked with the police. They'd be satisfied at this stage, among other things I put in the papers. And then I would just point out, in terms of the DPS, I've chatted with Neil about this. More of an off-the-record thing, that we're looking for 3 months in order to put somebody else in there. And also we've had discussions around core hours, about, let's see whether the Haggerston can operate, because they've got the training, they'll have the infrastructure. Let's see if it can be implemented to the satisfaction of the enforcement officers and everybody. and then we'll review the situation after, because we have
Okay.
to apply.
Okay,
That helps.
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
left with questions now. We need to be clear what we're discussing. Okay, I saw Neil that you had your hand up to come back in from the police. Do you want to give some clarity on exactly what hours we're talking about here?
Yeah, Chair, that's exactly what I was going to do. Yeah, we're seeking like core hours insofar as Amanda stated, which is an 11 o'clock finish during the week, midnight at the weekend, 10:30 on the Sunday. We do appreciate from what we discussed with Andy that that's an uncomfortable place to sit for their jazz night, and we would state that if the committee was minded to give them some extra time, we would ask that alcohol stop 30 minutes before the music, and that's their drinking up time. I believe the jazz night finishes at 1, but as I say, our initial request it would be core hours, and the rest is to your discretion if you were minded to do so.
Okay, I think I'm clear what's being asked for. Amanda, I think you're clear too. Did you want, go on, I'm going to put another question to you, Andy. Again, this is, I think it's clarification. We can go for the discussion later.
So,
what I think concerned us at the interim hearing, was Peter seems a nice guy, very committed to the area, very committed to the pub, but what we weren't really convinced is that he was in charge of it. We'd had these various changes, we understand the personal circumstances. Can you just explain to us, in your proposals, you say you're changing the DPS, I think Anya already asked about that, what is being proposed, and how will you be ensuring that the DPS is on the premises and is taking their responsibilities seriously and understands the rules?
So, great question, and one that an expected question in a way, as you can imagine. So, here's the thing. My understanding is he may not have given as positive an account of himself as he could at that interim step, so I'll park that. However, Mr. Clark is an experienced licensee. He's also a teacher. He's a responsible person. I think everybody's had a massive wake-up call at the Haggerston. Their life's been turned upside down, plus some very direct feedback from me that gives clarity. So Mr. Clark was going in every week and chatting with his two managers who may have been good at making people feel comfortable and all the rest of it. But as far as the Licensing Act goes and the requirements, perhaps not so good. In fact, not trained. So both now hold personal licenses. Both have been trained. I've done the one-to-one with Mr. Clark, who understands that he needs to take a far more active and diligent approach until we identify somebody else. He identifies somebody else that the police and Mr. Riviere are happy with. I'd say the police in this case because they bought the review. So that is the focus. I've been very direct in the one-to-one on expectations from every single authority and the law on what the DPS needs to be doing, and then Mr. Clark's ambition really is to find a suitable DPS and put them in. And I discussed with the police, and we feel that, probably if I'm wrong, Neil, but a 3-month period for that is reasonable. And in the meantime, everybody's been trained, the infrastructure is right, and so on, and there'll be more participation and activity and due diligence, plus 2 managers who now know what they should be doing and not getting confused. Does that help, sir?
Okay, sorry. So is the suggestion that we run the suspension for 3 months while you're training people up and bringing them up to speed? And am I wrong in thinking if you're getting the 2 managers as personal licensees, they may potentially be developed and trained up to become DPSs in the future?
Thank you. I'll answer the first question first. I'm definitely not suggesting a 3-month suspension. What I am suggesting is the infrastructure and the training is in place with these 2 personal license holders. I'm suggesting that now Mr. Clark has been trained and reminded his responsibilities and personally advised I think we had over an hour one-to-one, that he will take a more active role in the meantime. And what I'm stating is that the 2 managers, Otis Marchbank and Joseph Howe, aka better known as LJ, now are aware of their responsibilities under the Licensing Act and aware of the expectations. So the due diligence, it should be all so much easier to implement the missing piece of just digging into that, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Mr. Clark's going to be more proactive, more there, digging a bit more or a lot more to make sure that his license, if you're minded to keep it, is protected, because there is a clear and present danger and a clear and present understanding that should they be allowed to keep the license, which we hope they would, given all the circumstances, no reason why not, that that this, unless they can show due diligence and that they've acted properly or failed to act properly in a justifiable way, they will be back before you, and that will be that or that business, one would imagine.
Councillor Sizer, any more clarification?
Can I pick up on the comms? Is that more for now or discussion? But it was, I hadn't heard much of it, and I don't remember seeing much of it in the paperwork. That could be my mistake, but I'd like to hear more about the comms with residents.
Sorry, I don't know if my mic, that went very quiet.
It was about communication with the local residents, yeah? About liaison with local residents and how you're going to keep them on side and listen to what they're saying and work with them.
Yes, indeed. In fact, for the one resident here and her partner, presumably, who've moved into a stress area and had issues, we'd propose a regular discussion or meeting point, and certainly a point of contact. Communication has been one of the parts of the training as well. Internally, better communication with the new security company, better communication with the authorities, pub watch, and so on and so forth. Now, if I may come back to some earlier points, I doubt I'll remember them all at this stage, but I think one of the key ones is these nefarious drug dealers, among others, in the Kingsland Waste that may set up outside or nearby the Haggerston. Now, I'll just come in with a personal point first, which is, and I've been police Hackney, so I probably have some responsibility here, although I've done everything that I possibly could, it's never been my ward. But ever since I was a young teenager, maybe 13, 14, going to Kingsland Waste, and I'm seasoned, there have been drug dealers hanging around there because Faulkner's used to be a place to go to for special occasions. Now, the drug dealers who operate out of there are not sponsored, are not welcomed by the premises. This needs a problem-solving approach to counter them. I will, I'll use my police experience, I will say, having tackled drug gangs and so forth and operations successfully, one of the issues with drug dealers is they tend to be, or while they're very dangerous characters, they tend to be expert salespeople who engage with people. There's a whole load of people who use the Kingsland waste. They use it broadly because there are other premises that are open. From 512 to Pamela's, to Three Sheets, to restaurants, to some convenience stores and off licenses that might have had their challenges with the authorities in the past. I think it needs a problem-solving approach to deal with these drug dealers. They're joined up thinking, joined up action. It's not the premises' fault. The premises are victims of them in a way. You get some very gentle, vulnerable souls. I don't think the right phraseology. Go into the Haggerston as a place that they're welcome. They feel safe. You could argue not that night, but they believe that the staff look after them. And I think this is something we all need to deal with. I mean, Councillor Snell will know, the police and Mr. Riviere will know that there's always a topic in pub watches and other arenas where we just have to tackle this issue, a criminal street problem, not a problem that emanates from the press.
I'm concerned once again, it's good to get clarity at this stage. I'm concerned once again with straying into discussion, and I'm very happy to talk about that. Is there anything else at the next stage? But let's try and keep some clarity. Anything else, Councillor Sizer?
No, that's answered everything so far.
Could I just be a bit cheeky? Go on, I'll come back to you in a minute, Andy, but I want to be a bit cheeky and see, I hope sorry, I was going to talk to Peter Clark, because as I said, I was at that first hearing. He came across as a perfectly decent guy. He didn't come across as a guy who was affecting proper control at the time that this incident happened. So, but I just want to talk to you about the history of the pub, Peter, because I am aware there was. Remind me, this isn't the same one that used to be called Uncle Sam's, is it? Or is that a separate one up the street?
Yeah, no, it was Uncle Sam's. We bought it 12 years ago for the lady's name. I can't remember now.
Okay, and
basically, it's the same jazz night that she had. Right,
and there used to be a Saturday night thing as well. I haven't been since she had it, partly because it ran so late, and I'm getting old now. I like to be in bed earlier. And it did have a link going back far enough with the Jazz Warriors, which was a very well-known contemporary band at the time. And it also had a splendid Jamaican night on a Saturday night with people that I still go and see, those who are still alive. Now, my take is, you know, it was on some radio broadcast. The woman who ran it as Uncle Sam's basically said, how do I stop the drug users coming and drug dealers coming in and using these premises? Is there not, and I'm picking up what Andy has said there, is there not scope for you getting together with the kebab shop, with your local businesses, and coming up with a partnership, and then talking to your local councillors and us putting some support in behind you to stop these problems that are affecting the neighbours? Because
I think there definitely is. I think we could be better neighbours. I think we've got to take more active interest in Pub Watch, of course, which is an organisation that does something similar anyway. But we have got to be better neighbours. I think maybe first thing is I've been leaving it to other people. I've been leaving it to security too much, and I think my managers thought it was a security issue rather than theirs. But I think we've got to take a more proactive role in reporting people who perhaps before we saw as being slightly over our boundary lines. We thought if we keep them out of the pub, if we keep them away from our door, that's enough. And clearly, in hindsight comes clarity, doesn't it? And clearly, obviously, it isn't. And I accept that neighbour hasn't been having a comfortable time, and while she reports under police, we should be reporting under police. It's very obvious, really.
Okay, we want to wind this item up and move to discussion. Have you got anything else to contribute, Andy?
Only that, the thing of the portable radio, again, it's drug dealers, environmental health haven't cropped up, but I absolutely endorse getting councils on board, the authorities on board, the venues on board to tackle this situation. And I endorse what Peter says. It's music to my ears. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we can now move. Is it okay with you, Amanda, if we now move to discussion? We've been fairly lax on keeping to clarity at that stage, but at least we know where we're all coming from. If it's all right with you, Anya, I'm just going to pick off with some comments about these reviews, because it is always a tragedy to me when we cut back on what are obviously popular venues, and actually a lot of the reason that they get into trouble was that it's the peripheral stuff. I mean, and the famous one, of course, was the Macbeth down on Hoxton Street, where everybody was talking about us closing down a music venue. And in fact, most of the complaints were about what happened around the outside. Now, in this case, we're dealing with something worse, yeah? There's no way we can get away from the fact that this was a serious incident, and therefore we have to make a proportionate response in deciding how to go forward. But my take is, I'm hearing what Andy's saying. I know he's right. What I don't want to hear anyone saying from these premises is, oh, well, it's nothing to do with us, the fact that people are hanging around outside and that's contributing to the fact it's become a site for drug dealers to turn up and all the associated problems we have with that. I'm not sure it's within our gift. We control the inside of the premises. It's good to hear that commitment to do something with the neighbours to address that problem, and certainly go to your local councillors. I'm sure they'll be happy to work with you if you're not feeling you're getting enough support from our community safety people. So that's my take. And I am sympathetic. We've heard from the neighbour that Sunday night is a very different night. My perspective is that we can't say, oh, you can only go back to core hours for 6 months, because that's not in our gift. It's going to be about you demonstrating, if we cut back to core hours, that you can run the place in a different way that gets rid of the problems associated with your premises and with the previous people on these premises. And Sunday night, to me, Sunday night is a golden opportunity to say, okay, well, we recognise that's a different night. That's a way of demonstrating you can stay open later, not to the current hours, but a bit later. And then if you want to come back on and say we want the later hours on other nights, you've got a chance to prove yourselves. Now, that's where I'm coming from. I'm very happy for other people, including neighbours, to say that that's unreasonable. But that's why we're here at this discussion. Clearly, we will go away and we will make a decision together about that. And what I'm saying does not bind us to any decision, because Anya may think I'm completely out of order and say she's not prepared to go along with that and overrule me. But we'll sort that out amongst ourselves after this meeting is over. Go on, Andy, you want to come back quickly on that one?
I do, sir, yes. Just a point of law, and I wish I was a lawyer who could remember the stated case. However, whilst I agree in principle with what you say, that it would be wrong for a premises not to say, well, look, there are problematic people outside our place, namely drug dealers, that are bane on society, and we have a responsibility to do something. The lawful point is that the premises, unless they are shown to be actively encouraging it, cannot be held responsible for the acts of people that are nothing whatsoever to do with them. So I'm not saying they're not going to do nothing. They are. The intention is clear, recorded, and so forth. But the legal point is these are criminals engaged in criminal activity outside that are not condoned or encouraged by the premises. So
I thought that was pretty much what I said, but I'm sure you put it clearer than me. I can see that Channing has raised a hand. Am I correct? Someone's raised a hand. Oh, sorry, no, the police have raised a hand. Sorry about that. Neil Hundred, come on back in.
Yeah, Chair. Sorry. Yeah. It's never been our accusation that the venue has encouraged drug dealing, etc. Our premise is very, very simple. by not dispersing, the crowd sits there and is then fed off by the drug dealers, which is, I think, is the point you've made. So by actively dispersing, you haven't got the clientele base there for the drug dealers to attend, and that's why we've said about the hours coming back, so people disperse. The venue needs to do more in its dispersal, and hopefully it resolves the problem.
And I would hope, and obviously Channing's going to have to approve this from the council's perspective, I would hope that that dispersal policy does include active liaison with the neighbours, because we know damn well from Shoreditch that if you've got kebab shops and the like around about, that just encourages people to stay, and so it needs to be a jointly developed dispersal policy with the neighbours to the limit of our powers. Channing, may I put that idea before you? Okay. Councillor Sizer, anything that you want to talk about?
Chair, you just cut out there a bit.
Did you want me to say anything?
I'm just saying, well, it's always interesting to hear where you're coming from. So if people are strongly disagreeing with you, they've got a chance to tell you why.
Yeah, no, I was grateful to hear Mr. Clark's voice and to hear your perspective, and I can hear a willingness to engage with the community around you, which is exactly what we want to hear. I take on board, Andy, what you said about the legal side of it, but I think because this is exceptional circumstances, I think we want to go for the spirit of the law as well, which is that we need to be reaching out to the community very proactively to prove that this is not their intention. For this to become a hotspot, almost the onus is back on the venue to be proving that this is what they want as well. I would say maybe not legally, but in terms of where we're sitting at the moment. I think I just wanted to clarify one thing as well with the regular communication. I know you've reached out to Angela, which is perfect and what we want to hear. Can you, sorry if I missed it, but can you just clarify what regular communication with all local residents will be going forward, so that it's not just ad hoc, because that won't work. You want something much more robust in place so that you're reaching out.
Thank you. A few points there. Agreed. I have to cover off the law because I'm the agent, but in principle, I know Mr. Clark and everybody, especially me, we're against crime. But there will be that desire. In terms of the community, I must say there's been a demonstration of incredible support from the community, and we reached out with little time. It's regrettable that some people did mistakenly criticise the authorities, because there's no doubt something happened and needed an appropriate response. In terms of communicating with people, I'd say there definitely needs to be an effort made to communicate with Angela on a regular basis and ensure that she's happy. I'll come back to my earlier point, the resident next door and resident opposite and so forth are happy, but we need to have some sort of strand. I'm sure that the pub would be able to put something out on public media from people younger than myself, and dare I say Mr. Clark, unless that's his métier as well. But absolutely, and absolutely, I dare say also it would be most welcome for the Haggerston to put out a press release to say, to say thank you to the authorities.
So, sorry, Andy, could I come up with a suggestion, please?
Please do.
We have standard conditions. I find when I'm online, if I start looking through papers, my voice goes, it messes up the microphone. So I'm doing this from memory, and I'm not going to start checking the papers here and now. We have two standard clauses we use. One of them is about prominently displaying the person who is the contact person in and outside the premises. And another standard clause is for regular liaison meetings, and they should be held at the request of residents when they want it. Sometimes we put them extremely frequently. I think perhaps in this case we should be talking about initially every 6 months, and then perhaps even more frequently till we're getting through this issue. and it would help actually involve the community in tackling the behaviour outside the premises. So we put in a standard clause, and we'd like to hear from you that you're happy for us to do that, and what might be a sensible frequency over, say, the next 6 months until we try and get these premises safe and working well again.
Sorry, Amanda's got a hand up. I don't know whether to answer
Please
first.
I was just going to say, could they consider quarterly meetings? Quarterly liaison
Amanda's
meetings
suggesting quarterly. How about that?
every 3 months.
Dare I respond like this? Being very brave, saying that there are no standard clauses, but they would be most welcome and advised clauses. I'm not the decision maker, but I would absolutely recommend that that is a positive thing. I see Mr. Clark nodding his head. And also, I'd just say, with dealing with potentially dangerous drug dealers and their nefarious activities, there needs to be a problem-solving approach. And even a premises can be vulnerable. I think we need to problem solve it properly, protecting everybody involved as best we can. I'm ex-police, but to protect all those involved. But that partnership approach, especially with local council input, would be perfect. But I would just, clearly those drug dealers are going to be an area problem, but I just a cautious reminder to say that whilst it's heartfelt with Angela, it appears to be her and her partner are the only people that have raised the issue, as far as I know. Thank you.
I'm just going to comment before calling in Councillor Sizer. Sorry, anecdotally, I know there are other people in the area who moan about what happens when the Haggerston closes down. So I think you'll find that if you're actively seeking people to raise concerns, it's not just one person. I'm sorry, it's a late night, popular premises, and it causes problems. Let's be honest about it. Okay, Councillor Sizer.
Yeah, I was going to just reiterate that maybe because people haven't come forward doesn't mean that they're not in the community. That's the first point. The second thing is actually it's sort of a potential with the number of positive responses and the community that you've said is around. I think to use that and to capitalise that with the communication strategy going forwards, in working together to make it a safer environment, actually something positive could come out of this. So I think the strength of community support could be a positive, and to capitalise on that sooner rather than later so that the momentum is there. So things like a comm strategy with a announcement, and I don't know if you have a Facebook page, but that kind of thing, for regular and often discussions, and to say that you are there in listening mode for the community, I think is the right kind of approach going forward.
Okay, so I think we're pretty much at the end of the discussion phase. I think we can move to closing remarks. The key thing, I'll bring you in a minute, Andy, I see you there. The key thing about closing remarks is this decision is going to be made by me and Councillor Sizer, and so that's why I try and be open about where we're coming from. If you object to that, this is the point at which you've got to try and convince us to change our minds. The thing that I'm still not clear about is whether amongst the options before us, we are looking at immediately allowing the venue to reopen, or whether we need some sort of transition time to implement the various things that are being talked about. So, I mean, Andy, you said you want to come back now. Please come back on it now. But in your concluding remarks, I would like to hear from the responsible authorities what they think on this. But do you want to address that item now, Andy, and anything else you had your hand up for?
Yeah, you took me totally off track of what I was going to ask. So, yeah, all right. We don't believe that we need a period of suspension. They can't open until all their ducks are in a row. We think we've had the training, the policies, the infrastructure in place. We know where we stand. My other point was going to be merely this. Neil Hunwick from the police said that if the committee were minded for the Sunday for the 1 o'clock close, they'd ask for alcohol to be brought back half an hour before, given time and patience. I'll just say now that I would recommend that if that is an offer, that Mr. Clark would take that and definitely go forward with the communication strand as well. Back to you, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to go in reverse order now for people to sum up their case. I'm going to add another one in because actually I'm slightly confused by that police request. Generally, we actually like to stop serving alcohol, half an hour from closure. That's our standard rule. And what we don't like to do is encourage people to line up 2 or 3 pints on the table in front of them. So perhaps in your summing up, Mr. Hunswick, you can actually say why you think it's a good idea to stop alcohol half an hour earlier. But we've heard from the licensee that they're happy to go with that if that's a condition for going ahead on the Sunday night. So reverse order, let me get this right.
Sorry, Amanda has her hand up.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Snyder. Before you start the summing up or closing, I wanted to raise a couple of points, if that's okay.
Please do.
Through the chair, is to ask for clarification that on the list of conditions, is it agreed that we would have a capacity condition? Because I can't see one in the licence at the moment. Is that correct? That we want a capacity condition as set out on that list of conditions? And secondly, the site of an up-to-date fire risk assessment, is that a condition or is that something that's being sorted out with the police? Also, what's the other thing I wanted to ask? Yes, and also following Mr. Newman's last comment, does that mean quarterly liaison meetings are not accepted and he only wants to do communication on the website about contact? Can that be clarified? And I think that's it. Thank you.
Sorry, Amanda. Thank you. You've picked up what was at the base of the list of conditions that we had supplied by the police. You wanted a fire assessment and you wanted a capacity issue, and you're quite right to say that that has not been sorted out at this stage. And basically, we would be expecting that to be done as a condition of reopening. We can put that in as condition unless anyone objects. Mr. Newman.
So I don't know if me or Neil should go, but firstly on that, Neil and I and Mr. Clark have agreed capacities. I don't know if it came through on the up-to-date list. In answer to the question about meetings, we'd agree to both quarterly meetings and the social media side. I think the fire risk assessment that's certainly been updated. It's open to inspection at any time, and it's law there has to be an up-to-date fire risk assessment and training around it. And there's certainly been training on responsible drinking. Probably just need to check, but there's a policy on responsible drinking as well, which is not lining up all your pints before you close, if that helps.
Chair, just to ask, sorry, I'm sorry, I do apologize. I just have forgotten my question now.
Shall I ask a question, Amanda? Yeah. So what are the numbers agreed with the police, and can we put them in as a condition on the licence?
I think the numbers are already set out in the list of conditions, Chair. Yes, yeah. Sorry, my question was, have the police seen the fire risk assessment? That's what I wanted to know, sorry. Have the police and the licensing authority both been sent a copy of the fire risk assessment?
Yeah, okay. I mean, the reason I was going to say, the reason we asked for a copy of the fire risk assessment is that sets the safe capacity. So we've taken Andy at his word that the risk assessment states 250, which is where we've got the figure of 250 from. But obviously, we want to see either us or the council a copy of the fire risk assessment just to back up what it says, and then it shouldn't be a problem to set the condition, to set the capacity as a condition of 250.
So
But if I may,
Yeah.
that's the number I was told by the managers. I haven't had sight of a figure. That's what I've been told by the fire risk guy who came round.
So as long
So
as,
what
long
do
as
we do in
it's,
the meantime?
Sorry, Amanda, repeat that.
What do we do in the meantime then? Do we put on the capacity condition as on the list of conditions, or do we wait for the police to see the fire risk assessment first or something?
well, you could change the wording slightly to say that the capacity will be set by the fire risk assessment as lodged with the local authority. And if it says 250, then it's there. It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It doesn't say a capacity on it. They don't have to, although it's very helpful if they do. All I've got is that assurance.
Normally they do put an amount on the fire risk assessment. Normally.
No, not always, Amanda. Unfortunately, there are some out there that just don't put it on, which I find questionable on a personal note. But they don't have one, and I'm aware of other clients and other places I inspected where they don't have them on there unless requested. That's our go-to place normally to work out if a capacity needs to be put forth at places like this. So that's all I know. It sounds.
So essentially, you're happy that we place a condition that the capacity is limited to 250. I mean, just to explain to everyone at this meeting, when we have an expedited review, we have 28 days. And we don't really like it. You know, normally we would have a license application come in. It's a considered discussion. You can go to and fro and work out what addresses all the different interests. It's therefore really important that when premises have to face this type of review, they get their act together, they employ someone good to advise them, they show a commitment to work with the police and our licensing authorities, but it does tend to leave loose ends. And that's what I think Amanda is keen that we tie up now, because however good the current management might be in taking this forward, what we have to have is a license that is robust for anyone who might take over the license in future. So we're going to put a limit of 250 on this. We understand the licensee's happy with that. And I think now we can just tie up the odds and ends, yeah? Can I go ahead, Amanda, or have you got something else?
No, sorry, I just remembered another important question that I have to tie up, otherwise we'll have to go back after the conclusion.
Okay.
It's the interim steps. The police haven't confirmed what their position is on the interim steps, because remember, we suspended the licence on the last occasion, pending this hearing, which we're now at. But because this is an expedited review, we have to confirm whether the interim steps continue or not. And that's what we need clarification on. And
okay, and that is particularly important. Correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, because if our decision is appealed today, then essentially the current suspension might be lifted and it will be opening as it used to open. So go on, Neil, tell us what you want us to do about the interim steps.
I mean, I would suggest if everything is agreed and we take it at face value that a new DPS is going to be put in place in a set timescale, then there would be enough of a change, because the whole reason for asking for interim steps and suspension of license was to stop anything happening again before this training that has taken place could take place. So if we're satisfied that the venue has been trained to a suitable standard, then we would be happy that the interim steps be removed.
Okay, so your suggestion, Mr. Hunswick, is that the interim steps stay in place until a new DPS is appointed, and at that stage the premises can reopen. Sorry, I can see Andy's not liking that one. Go on, Amanda, did you want to say something?
Yes, I think PC Hunwick is saying that the interim steps do not need to continue because of the agreed changes and because the DPS will be replaced at some period. But I think you need to clarify, PC Hunwick, what period of time are we saying that the DPS needs to be, replaced by?
PC Hunwick?
Yeah, no, we did have an informal agreement that it would be within 3 months that a suitable DPS would be found.
Should that be part of our decision then, or the requirements following this? Should we put that in?
Yes, definitely, because I mean, obviously, you're making that decision. It needs to be given a time frame, otherwise, it can just be left to wander. So yes, a fixed period of time. And as I say, Amanda's what she said is correct. Is that because of the work that's being done, the whole reason for asking for the interim steps and the suspension was so that we could minimise the risk of it happening again until such times as the training was put in place.
Okay, well spotted, Amanda. Thank you for that very helpful intervention. I've got a thumbs up from Andy, so I'm assuming we can do that change and there's no further comment on it. Okay,
so covered, everything done. Thank you.
Lovely. So Andy, if you where are we? You're the first one to come back. If I do summing up in reverse order, we start with you, and you can wear two hats again if you like. You can first represent the premises, and then you can represent the supporters, unless they decide they want to do it for themselves. Go on, take it away.
So you've heard there are 101 supporters that have come forward in the short time that we've had. There would have been more who love the place. You have heard. Sorry, am I just doing the supporters at the moment, or both?
No, you're doing it the wrong way round. It's the premises first, and then the supporters.
Oh, sorry, slack. Right, from the premises, a lesson learned, a sharp awakening. They've invested time, effort, stress. We would beg for compassion that the Sunday be allowed to have that halfway step of 1 o'clock, and as discussed, to help keep jobs, to help keep a wonderful thing going that helps the community, who helps give what they give to people. We've expressed it. It's come from the heart. They've put the effort in. They've done the hard yards. Of course, it's within your power to, or anybody's, or the enforcement people and a resident indeed, to bring a review. If they fall short, I'm sure they won't. They've had the training. They'll have the infrastructure. We're still putting measures in place. We're going to be dealing with issues in a problem-solving way. I'll put it to you that police aren't seeking revocation. Mr. Riviere seems happy. I think we've gone some way to get a better understanding with the resident here, and we'll look to improve that relationship and also take on board those ideas of further communication with more residents, because the Haggerston, as you rightly say, can be a focal point. Not saying they're implicit, but it can be a focal point. That's my submission. On that side, I've started off with the residents. I'd say the residents from businesses, from the resident next door, from the resident opposite, and other people in the Haggerston just love what they deliver there. They feel safe. It's all inclusive to various people who often feel like they are made to feel like outsiders. It's a much loved and cherished place. And just please show some compassion and help it survive, having the confidence that measures are in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Angela, are you still there?
Yes.
Hi, Angela. No, I make it quite clear, I do not think you are the only person who's suffered from activities outside of these premises. But do you feel that what's being proposed today would allow us to reopen without causing the sort of trouble that you've had in the past?
Yes, sure. In an ideal world, so I'm not a legal expert or anything, but in an ideal world, the bar would continue, the pub would continue to operate, and these problems won't happen. So of course, then that's the best solution for everyone. The Haggerston, which is important for the cultural and social life for the community, continues to operate, jobs are kept, but at the same time, the quality of life of residents is not compromised. Of course, that's the best solution. Yes.
Well, I would encourage you to work with the council. I'm sure our Safer Neighbourhoods team would love to work with you. So please encourage your partner and other people around you to engage with the premises in actually pursuing the problems that we know exist outside. It needs a joint effort from us all to stop it. Thank you for your contribution today. Now, where have I got to? Now, on the responsible authorities, do you want to go first, Channing?
Chair, I don't really have much further comments to add. I would only say that we welcome the suggestion about the liaison with the local residents on a regular basis. And finally, the only sort of outstanding issue I can see would be the hours on the Sunday, and that would be at the discretion of the committee. But nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you. And who have we got left? The police, Mr. Hunswick.
Yeah, Chair. Yes, I think we've made our position clear. As I say, we DPS with a fixed time frame, the conditions that have been agreed, and core hours and the discretion with regards to the Sunday hours. As I say, we don't. We do have a standard thing where we have half an hour drinking up. I wouldn't be encouraging anybody to line them up just to order their drinks and finish them off by the last half hour of music is playing. But as I say, the hours, we leave that to your discretion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so you won't be happy with us, but you'll still be talking to us.
Oh, absolutely. But like, we can always bring them back another day. We're always watching.
Oh, implied threat there. Okay, I think that's come to the end of the closing remarks. Have I missed anything, Amanda? I think I've heard everything I need to make. I think I've heard everything I need to make a decision. Anya, is there anything that you would want further clarity on?
Not at all. It's been really helpful, and thank you everyone for your involvement.
Thank you. We've given everyone quite a bit of space, but I think that's been helpful, and hopefully it will bring a consensus about the way forward. Thank you so much, everybody. It is just now down to, please sign off, because it's just down to those of us who will be making the decision and our immediate advisors. Thank you very much.
Okay, goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.